Hello my lovelies, how are you today? Okay, so I just want to get straight into it, but quickly I can't help myself but ask you, which team are you on? Johnny Depp or Amber Heard? Please let me know. I am 100% all the way through Johnny Depp team. Yes, I'm Johnny Depp team because Amber is Amber. Long before TV had Desperate Housewives, Wiley had Candy Montgomery and Betty Gore, and the horrific events that brought the small town into national and international attention. In search for fireworks and butterflies, Candy committed the ultimate act of betrayal. But was it really self-defense or something even more sinister? Before we jump straight into today's video, I just want to give you a quick disclaimer. All the information I'm giving you in today's video is already found in the public domain. I also don't mean any disrespect to anyone I talk about in today's video. The video is for educational purposes only. Thank you so much. Born Candace Wheeler, Candy grew up in a military family, moving from base to base throughout her childhood. She eventually married a man named Pat Montgomery, who worked as an electrical engineer at Texas Instruments. In 1977, the Montgomerys moved to Collin County, Texas, and they had 2 children, a son and a daughter. Candy was a full-time mom, and the family's social life revolved around the First United Methodist Church of Lucas. Candy was a really outgoing, likable person. She was really involved in her community, her church. She was in the choir. She even taught Sunday school. It was through the Methodist Church of Lucas that Pat and Candy became friends with Ellen and Betty Gore. Like Pat, Ellen worked as an electrical engineer with a Dallas-based tech company. Candy and Betty instantly hit it off as well. Born in 1950, Betty Pomeroy grew up in a small town in Kansas. She was one of 3 children, and she also had 2 younger brothers. She was very popular. She was involved in all kinds of school events, music, plays, on the student council, and she wanted to be an elementary school teacher. While in college, Betty met Ellen Gore, a teaching assistant in one of her classes. After the class ended, they began dating and they married in 1970. Following the birth of their daughter Alyssa, the family moved to Collin County, where Betty became a teacher in the local school system. In 1978, Candy began an affair with Betty's husband, Alan. Candy ran into Alan, and I mean this quite literally. She ran into him during summer 1978 while both of them were playing on the church volleyball court. Their chance meeting during this volleyball game was followed by a few weeks of flirting, which led to Candy finally admitting her attraction to Alan. You know, those butterflies that are flying quite high that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. But we also need to remember that both of them, they were married already separately. They had their own spouses. After some back and forth, during which they weighed the pros and cons of a potential affair between them, Candy and Ellen decided to have an affair, starting on 12th of December 1978. Of course they did. Because, you know, why not? It's not like they were both married with other people at the same time, but yeah, anyway. Candy and Ellen saw each other for a few months. Candy tells Ellen she is afraid that the affair is getting too intense, but the relationship regardless continues. In 1979, Betty gives birth to her second child called Bethany. After the birth of Bethany, Betty suffered from postpartum depression, which affected her marriage. Shortly after the birth of Bethany, in July 1979, Alan began signaling to Candy that he wanted to distance himself from the affair and work on his marriage to Betty. It was Candy who allegedly finally told him, Alan, you seem to be leaving it up to me, so I've decided I won't call, I won't try to see you, I won't bother you anymore. On 13th of June 1980, Alan, away on business and after having tried to reach Betty, his wife, by phone without any success, at around 11 p.m., he calls his neighbor, Richard Parker, and he asks the neighbor to check on Betty. Alan then calls Candy, who tells him that she saw his wife earlier in the day and honestly nothing seems suspicious. Richard and another neighbor, Lester Gaylor, together with Jerry McMahon, pronunciation. All of them go to Alan and Betty's house to find out what was happening. Lester, he went in first, and then they went down the hall to the bathroom, turning on the lights. They spotted a small baby raising her head out of the crib. When the baby saw them, she began crying. She was there almost the whole day without being fed or anyone attending to her. Lester, the neighbor, discovered Betty's body in the utility room, although he didn't see her body at first, but rather thick, congealed, reddish-brown oceans of blood glistening on the tile. On the floor lay the remains of Betty Gore. Her head and body were so badly mutilated that the neighbors believed she suffered a shotgun blast. A few feet away from her body, there was a 3-foot-long, wood-handled axe. An autopsy later determined Betty was struck 41 times with the axe. 28 of the blows were to her head and to her face. Investigators believe the brutal nature of the murder indicated that her killer knew her. Betty suffered vicious blows to all parts of her body, her face, her arms, her head, her torso, and even into her legs. It was obvious that this was a personal attack out of rage. And guys, as I keep saying in these cases, when it's so up close and personal with so much brutality, the victim knows their killer. The killer is acting out of negative emotions. The killer tried to clean up the crime scene but gave up when they realized there was just too much blood. A bloody thumbprint was found on the freezer as well as a bloody shoe print in the laundry room. Blood on the bathroom wall and drain revealed that the killer washed off in the shower. A pot of burnt coffee indicated that the murder happened in the morning. Investigators really at this point wondered if Alan murdered his wife before flying to Minnesota. However, the bloody footprint didn't match his foot size. Quote, "We were looking for someone small in stature, whether it was a child or a woman," former Collin County investigator Stephen Defbaugh told Snapped. A 5-year-old who was friends with Alyssa Gore said that she went to their house on the morning of the murder, but when she knocked on the door, no one answered. Then, around 11 a.m., she saw Candy Montgomery leave the house, the mistress. Of course, at this point, Candy was brought in for questioning. She explained that Alyssa Gore slept over at her house the previous night and she had just stopped by to get a swimsuit from Betty. Then she went to church where she was teaching a Bible class to children out on summer vacation. Investigators interviewed Alan Gore on June 16th, just hours after Betty was laid to rest. He said that his marriage was good, but he admitted that he and Betty got into a fight before he left for Minnesota. Betty was afraid that she was pregnant again. The next morning, Alan called detectives to just get something off his chest. He told them that for the better part of the past year, he had been having an affair with Candy Montgomery. Alan said it was Candy's idea. She had asked him if he would be interested in having an affair. She asked him that after a church volleyball game. And of course, it happened. Because, why not? Both of them were sensually unsatisfied in their marriages, but neither one of them wanted a divorce. The affair was meticulously planned, with Alan and Candy splitting motel rentals and meeting every other week for sex before or after a picnic lunch. Yeah, because Nothing screams better after a picnic lunch than sex, yes. Candy Montgomery, she wanted fireworks from a relationship. That's what she told her friend Sherry about her affair with Alan. Candy had a comfortable marriage with her husband. Pat, he made a good salary at Texas Instruments, but their marriage was, you know, routine, and she was bored crazy. I mean, how many marriages are not routine? She really wanted to feel the butterflies, as we like to say. Alan and Candy agreed to end the affair if they got too close. Alan broke things off with Candy after he and Betty attended a church-sponsored couples retreat meant to help troubled marriages. You know, guys, I've seen similar things happening when I did my White House farm murders videos. I can link them at the end of this video if you want to have a look, and I'll also put the link in the description down below. It's actually a 3-part series of the White House farm murders. So in the White House farm murders, Sheila, she had mental problems and had a very tough pregnancy, and she went through so much, and yet Colin, her husband, decided it was a wonderful idea to cheat on her. And honestly, I'm seeing the same thing happening here. Betty, she's going through postpartum depression. Obviously, she's not going to be sensually interested in her marriage. She's going through so much. Yet Alan decides it's a great idea to have an affair with Candy just because he was sensually dissatisfied in his marriage. He's not even thinking about Betty's feelings and what she's going through. I mean, I don't understand. Why do some people have to put so much emphasis on the sensual side of things? Yes, I understand that intimacy is a huge part of a marriage, but so is support. You don't just go into someone else's bed when your partner has a real struggle. Is that how you repay them? Is that how you repay them? In my opinion. So going back to the story, detectives, they bring Candy back for questioning later that day. She said that she didn't have anything to do with the killing, and when asked to take a polygraph test, she refused, which in my eyes is always a red flag, red flag. The fingerprints and the footprints found at the crime scene were enough to secure an arrest warrant, and Candy Montgomery was arrested on June 27th, 1980, and she was charged with Betty Gore's murder, her friend. She's arrested, and Collin County investigator Stephen Defbaugh was the one who read her rights. Female jailers strip searched her and took off all her clothing, and that's when they noticed all the bruises and also a cut on her toe. At her murder trial in October 1980, Candy's lawyers revealed their defense strategy. Candy Montgomery did kill Betty Gore, but she did it in self-defense. Candy took the stand in her own defense, and she claimed that when she arrived at the Gore house, Betty confronted her about the affair. She said that Betty came at her with an axe, swinging it down the floor and cutting Candy's toe. According to Candy, the two of them then fought to get control of the weapon. After grabbing the axe, Candy knocked Betty to the floor. Betty then she kept coming at her, so she claimed she had no choice but to strike her with the axe. But I mean, 41 times? Prosecutors argued that the 41 strikes Candy inflicted on Betty went far beyond a simple act of self-defense. Candy's defense, however, called on a psychologist who testified a traumatic childhood memory of Candy's was triggered when Betty told her, "Shh, I hit her, I hit her, I hit her," Candy said on the stand. Ahead of the trial, Candy's attorney, Don Crowder, called Dr. Fred Faison, a psychiatrist with experience practicing hypnosis. The admissibility of testimony provided under hypnosis varies in the US from state to state. The Department of Justice has previously noted that federal courts addressing the issue of hypnotically induced testimony of a prosecution witness have generally permitted the use of such testimony, holding that the fact of the hypnosis affects only the credibility of the witness and not the witness's competence or the admissibility of his or her testimony. In a statement, the Department of Justice added that in the late 1980s and 1990s, the question of the admissibility of hypnotically refreshed or enhanced testimony went into a state of flux, largely caused by cases involving uncorroborated allegations of child SA following regressive therapy or other forms of hypnosis-related therapy to bring out repressed memories of childhood incidents. This series of cases saw many convictions later reversed on appeal based on a rethinking of the admissibility issue, and eventually resulted in the adoption in the federal courts of a case-by-case approach in which the court has discretion to balance all of the factors to determine the reliability of the evidence and the probative versus prejudicial effect of the testimony. In Candy Montgomery's case, Dr. Fred Faison said that his sessions with Candy unveiled childhood trauma as well as her memories from the day of Betty Gore's death. By the end of the first session, Faison had done what Crowder had asked him to do. He had found the trigger of Candy Montgomery's rage. Candy said she was at Betty Gore's house picking up Betty's daughter's swimsuit when Betty confronted her about her affair with Ellen. Betty attacked Candy with an axe, striking her on the head and on her toe. The two struggled. Candy reportedly shoved Betty, and with Betty facing away, she brought the axe up with both hands and brought the blade down on the back of Betty's head. The physical fight continued. Dr. Faison testified that Betty at one point told Candy to shh, which the psychiatrist contended brought back to the surface a childhood memory of Candy's. According to Dr. Faison, there was a connection between a memory of Candy being shushed by her mother during a specific incident as a child and being shushed by Betty. The hypnotherapist testified that Candy Montgomery was overtaken by rage due to the traumatic punishment suffered during childhood. Dr. Faison and other psychiatrists said that Candy's attack and her behavior afterwards were aspects of her psychological condition. Dr. Faison claimed that he sent her into a trance during hours-long hypnosis sessions, making her restate the events of June 13 again and again. And now comes the shock, everyone. If you haven't heard about this case, now this is a shocker. After deliberating for under 4 hours, the jury acquitted Candy Montgomery of the murder of Betty Gore, which shocked Texas and the entire world. At the time, Candy, she showed no emotion when the verdict was read. The judge had asked everyone in the courtroom, including the parties, to refrain from reacting in any way when he read the decision out loud. Candy Montgomery fought back tears, however, as she and her husband Pat were escorted out of the Collin County Courthouse under heavy guard after District Judge Tom Ryan received a letter threatening her life. Because Betty Gore's body wasn't found until that night, the first newspaper headlines didn't appear for 2 days. Teacher hacked to death in Wiley home, shouted the Dallas Morning News that Sunday. A 5th grade teacher at R.C. Dodd Middle School was hacked to death by an axe-wielding killer who took a shower afterward. The brutal death and the trial and acquittal of Candy Montgomery became the only focus of the community. At the time, Wiley was a town of 3,700 people. The young baristas at the Shoemaker and Hart coffee shop on Wiley's historic main street stared blankly at a visitor asking about an event that happened before they were born. But the customer knew exactly what the visitor wanted to know. Jacqueline Brown and her family had moved to Wiley only a few months before the killing. In particular, she recalled the immediate fear that shut down the town even after the arrest. "We didn't know for sure that she was the one," Jacqueline said of Candy. "Nothing that big happens here. I still have people ask me who moved to the community what happened to Montgomery," she said. "They like to drive by the house." Immediately after the trial, Candy Montgomery said that she wanted to get all this behind her and be normal again. She moved to Georgia and she was certified as a family counselor. She declined to talk to a news reporter. "I'm telling you in big bold letters, I'm not interested," she said. At the time, neighbors told neighbors, and then fear spread with the news. Robert King, he owned the Wiley Flower and Gift Shop, and he was out making deliveries that Saturday. When he got back to the shop, the back door was unexpectedly locked. "We thought there might be a mass murderer coming around here," he said in 2011. The investigators, they had clues to work with: bloody footprints, a fingerprint on the freezer, and a small community of people who knew a lot about each other's whereabouts. 6 days after the killing, there was a new headline: "Female friend of husband sought in ex-killing of Wiley housewife." The community started to line up for and against Candy Montgomery. A July 8 story in the Dallas Times-Herald was headlined, "Candy Montgomery, is she a killer?" It quoted people who said they knew her. "Candy," said an admiring friend, "doesn't have a dark side." That neighbor turned out to be wrong. But people in Wiley still pull for each other. When Jaron Icegrigg, a severely disabled boy, was found dead in a park in April 2011, he became Wiley's angel. Newcomers to Wiley still ask about the ex-killer case. There is a public library branch less than a half-mile from where the Gores lived. The women behind the counter, they smile knowingly when asked if they have a copy of Evidence of Love. "When new people come to town, they want a book," said circulation manager Cheryl Roberts. Steve Devbaugh has been the Collin County Fire Marshal since 1996. In 1980, he was a crime scene investigator sent to the Gore house. Occasionally, he still gives lectures about handling a crime scene, and his students invariably want to see the Gore material. Why? "I think it's about the use of the axe. People don't use that very often to murder someone," he said. He recalled that the body was in a really bad shape. Of the 41 wounds, 28 were to the head. Aside from the gruesome specifics, Steve has his own personal collection of odd coincidences that he shares. Start with Friday the 13th date. That was also the week in 1980 when the first Friday the 13th movie opened, featuring ex-spattered Gore. The Gore's house was the 13th from the corner. From the time of the death until the body was discovered took about 13 hours. From the day of the death until Candy Montgomery was arrested took 13 days. The magic number 13, or should I say the cursed number 13. On the kitchen table, Steve found a blood-flecked newspaper open to the movie page and an ad for The Shining, a movie where Jack Nicholson's character famously hacks through doors with an axe. "I think about it," Steve said about the Gore crime scene, "every June 13. And I am going to add an extra one here. From me, this is coming from me. The last name was Gore as well. Gore, yes. Need I say more? By October 1980, the focus had shifted from Wiley to McKinney and the old courthouse on the town square. The building had been shut for a couple of years, but the new courthouse didn't have a room large enough to handle the expected crowd. Now that building is the McKinney Performing Arts Center and the courtroom is the main theater. But the local Justice of Peace still uses the room for night court a couple of times a month. The people who run the theater, they keep the basic details of the case close at hand for the visitor who wanders in with questions. Circling back to around the trial, after months of hinting at alibis and alternate suspects, Candy Montgomery's lawyer opened with a bombshell, a self-defense plea. Don Crowder, arguing his first criminal case, shocked the prosecution as well. The state presented its case proving that Candy Montgomery killed Betty Gore. Crowder and Montgomery offered no argument, but Montgomery took the stand. She and Alan Gore had an affair that ended months before, she said. She had gone to the Gore's house that day because Lisa Gore, 5 years old, had been on a sleepover with Montgomery's daughter and she needed a bathing suit. Betty Gore confronted Candy Montgomery with a question about the affair and came at her with the axe, Candy said. In a struggle with a larger woman, Candy Montgomery gained control. I hit her, and I hit her. She fell slowly, almost to a sitting position. I kept hitting her and hitting her. I felt so guilty, so dirty. I felt so ashamed. Don Crowder brought in a psychiatrist who said that an offhand remark by Betty during the fight, shh, had triggered a repressed memory from when Candy was 4 years old and fueled the rage behind the frenzied series of blows that obliterated Betty's face. The jury acquitted Candy in less than 5 hours. The number of wounds was never an issue, juror Alice Doherty Rowley told the news. We determined it never had a bearing on the verdict at all, whether it was 1 gunshot or 1,000 whacks. The verdict shocked the entire community, which condemned Candy Montgomery for infidelity and generally didn't buy the self-defense argument. Alan Gore quickly remarried and he moved away, but the marriage ended in divorce and his daughters were raised by Betty's parents. Don Crowder, the defense attorney, took his own life in 1998. The Montgomerys have stayed out of the news. But a few years after the trial, many people cooperated with 2 local journalists, John Bloom and Jim Atkinson, who wrote Evidence of Love. In 1990, the book was used as the basis for a TV movie called Killing in a Small Town. Barbara Barbara won an Emmy and Golden Globe Award for her portrayal of Candy Morrison. When John Bloom and Jim Atkinson worked on the book, they tried to find a deeper meaning in the killing. Betty Gore and Candy Montgomery were troubled housewives whose marriages weren't working out in very specific ways. We thought it was that backdrop that made the story of its time, and not just an ex-killing, John Bloom said. Asked in 2011 if he thinks the case has left any significant imprint beyond the families involved, he said, "That's the wrong question. The answer to your question is not so much that Candy Montgomery's actions left a mark on the world," Bloom said, "but Candy Montgomery's life was representative of many others. We just don't get to see inside those others because in most cases there is no ex handy." The Betty Gore murder was dramatized in the 1990 CBS television movie A Killing in a Small Town. There are currently 2 new series about the case, including HBO Max's Love and Death, which stars Elizabeth Olsen as Candy Montgomery and Lily Rabe as Betty Gore. I believe that this premiered on the 25th of March of this year. There is also a Hulu series which stars Jessica Biel as Candy Montgomery, and this one will be released on 9th of May of this year. After Candy's acquittal, the Montgomerys moved to Georgia and then they later divorced. Candy now goes by her maiden name and works as a mental health therapist, having earned a certification as a family counselor. Mental health therapist after killing someone? Family counselor after destroying a family and having an affair? Okay, yeah, what do I think? Honestly, this is kind of a tricky one, but if I'm honest, I don't believe the hypnotherapist theory that Candy killed Betty because of a suppressed memory which was triggered when Betty said shh. If you think about it, I mean, even Candy had children of her own, and also I'm quite sure that she used the shh technique as well, as do so many other parents. She was also, you know, heavily involved in the church. I'm quite sure that someone at some point shushed a baby or a child. So I'm not sure that I buy this, if you know what I mean. I also don't think, definitely 100%, I don't think that she did it in self-defense. I don't think. I think it was cold-blooded murder. Plain and simple. Murder. It could be that Betty confronted her with the affair, Candy then lost control, they fought and Candy took the axe, hit Betty, she fell, and then she kept on hitting her. And I think that she did it out of jealousy in a fit of rage. It wasn't planned, but there must have been some conversation that they had, and maybe Betty said something and made Candy lose control. Maybe Betty threatened Candy that she would tell her husband about the affair. Remember that Candy didn't really want a divorce, so potentially it could have ended in divorce if her husband found out. I mean, eventually it did anyway, but you see where I'm trying to go with this. This would explain the amount of blows, 41 blows, out of which more than 20 to her head and face. Candy knew exactly what she was doing, in my opinion. You hit someone 5 times, 10 times, surely at one point you realize it's enough. They are gone. How can you call this self-defense? You defend yourself and you stop when you are out of danger, right? And the jury not considering the amount of blows as a decisive factor, that just blew my mind. I think that this was completely wrong, honestly. I don't think that she should have been acquitted. And then the qualification that she gets afterwards and the job that she does afterwards, I'm gobsmacked. Please guys, let me know what do you think about this case and about everything that has been happening in this case in the description down below. And thank you so much for watching today's video, my lovelies. I will see you in the next one. Take care and stay safe, and please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up or a thumbs down, whichever way you prefer. Really helps me and my channel and the YouTube pushing the video out on the platform to spread awareness, and so more people can see it. And also, if you are not a subscriber, please consider subscribing, and also make sure you turn the notification bell on so you are notified of any new videos I upload. Thank you guys. Bye.